See Windolph's shocking account of Custer's last stand. Charles Windolph was a soldier in the United States Army who fought in the Battle of Little Bighorn, serving as a private in Company L, 7th Cavalry Regiment. Windolph was one of the few survivors. A German immigrant, he joined the army in 1872 and served for 5 years, earning the Medal of Honor for his bravery during the battle. His account of the battle is regarded as one of the most detailed and accurate, making him a celebrated figure in American history. Before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel to support our community on that fateful Sunday. June 25th, near noon, we crossed the divide. Between the Rosebud and the Little Bighorn, our regiment was in column of march, riding west. The troopers of each company rode for abreast, with a gap of 50 or 60 feet between companies. Suddenly, we halted, and Lieutenant Cook instructed Bent to take his company H, along with D under Captain Weir and D under Lieutenant Godfrey, to scout the hills and engage any hostiles encountered. General Custer retained troops C and L, while Major Renault led troops A and G, with most of the Indian scouts under Lieutenants Varnum and Hare. Our 7th Cavalry, consisting of 600 men, was divided into detachments, pursuing Indian forces in rugged terrain. We knew a sizable force of hostiles lay 12 to 15 miles west, but the exact number remained uncertain. Our Indian scouts suspected several thousand hostiles, but Custer and most officers estimated facing 1,000–2,000 15 warriors, likely poorly armed. They expected a rear guard action, allowing the Indians to escape. Instead, we faced a force potentially twice that number, outnumbering Custer's 600 men 5–1. Custer planned a surprise dawn attack on June 26, but decided to attack immediately. When hostile scouts detected his column, Benteen, leading 3 troops, rode ahead to scout. We traversed rough terrain, which proved challenging for the horses. From each successive hilltop, Lieutenant Gibson signaled back that he saw no signs of Indians. Even the troopers in the ranks thought we were on a futile mission. After 2 hours, we turned back onto Custer's trail, relieved to return to the little valley. We continued west down a small stream, where the lead pack mules got stuck in a quagmire, highlighting the pack train's slow pace. As we departed, we heard distant firing ahead. Captain Ware led his company, and Bentini was ahead of him. We all knew we would soon be engaged in battle. Shortly after leaving the morass, we passed a burning teepee, likely set ablaze by our Indian scouts. The horses sensed danger, growing restless. Around this time, we saw Sergeant Knipe of Tom Custer's C Troop delivering an order for Captain McDougall to hasten with the pack mules. Benton ordered him to return down the trail. We then spotted Trumpeter Martini, wounded, but delivering a message from Custer to Benton to bring the packs quickly. Martini, a feisty little Italian, who had served as a drummer boy with Garibaldi in the fight for Italian independence, was familiar to me since he belonged to H Troop. We used to tease him good-naturedly, but never did so again after this battle. He proved himself to be a true man of metal. His horse was bleeding profusely from a bullet wound in its right hip, but Martini was oblivious to it. Bentini ordered him to rejoin his company. I have always surmised that Bentini thought it unnecessary to send additional word to Captain McDougall, as Sergeant Knipe had already conveyed the message to bring on the pack train with all haste. In any case, Martini's horse was exhausted, and he struggled to keep up with us. The sound of heavy firing grew louder, and soon we encountered several Crow or Re-Scouts driving a few Indian ponies. They shouted soldiers and gestured towards the bluffs rising to the north. We knew we were nearing the valley of the Little Bighorn, and that fierce combat was underway in the vicinity. Benteen ordered us to draw our pistols, and we charged up the bluffs at a gallop, anticipating an imminent encounter with hostiles. Upon cresting the first set of rolling hills, the river valley suddenly unfolded before us. To the left, the spectacle that beheld our eyes was enough to strike fear into the hearts of the bravest men. Below us, perhaps 150 feet or more down in the valley and about half a mile distant, figures on horseback were galloping wildly, with shots ringing out in every direction. Farther down the river, we espied large masses of mounted men whom we suspected to be Indians. We were riding at a swift pace ourselves, and had barely caught a glimpse of this tragic battlefield. When we spotted mounted and dismounted soldiers, on a knoll to the north, we rode swiftly towards them, our hearts pounding with anticipation. I shall pause here to recount the fate of our comrades with Renault. Recall that around 12:15 p.m. Renault was given command of 3 troops, 17 Crow and Ree scouts, and 3 White scouts. Custer leading 5 troops proceeded in column to the right, while Renault's column moved to the left. Benton, with 3 troops, was instructed to scout the rough hills to the south and west, and I, being with Benton, did not witness the events that unfolded for the next 5 hours. However, I have heard the accounts so frequently that I shall attempt to relay them in the simplest manner possible. Please note that I was not present, and am repeating the stories told by survivors, as the 2 battalions descended into the dry creek bottom. Occasionally come within 50 yards of each other, and at other times be as far as 200 yards apart. Both columns trotted westward, towards the Little Bighorn. Around 2 p.m., they came upon a burning teepee containing the body of an Indian warrior, killed in General Crook's battle with the Indians, just a week prior, less than 20 miles away. One of the White scouts ahead shouted back to Custer that hostiles were nearby, keeping out of rifle range. Custer then signaled Major Renault to cross the creek and instructed Adjutant Cook to order Renault, the Little Bighorn, to miles farther west, then charge the Indian village to the right, with the understanding that the entire force would provide support. This last phrase has been a contentious point, debated by many regarding the tragic events that were about to unfold. Renault led his force of 120 men, accompanied by a handful of guides and scouts, at a brisk trot crossing the Little Bighorn Ford, and pausing only to water their horses, and reform in troop formation on the west bank of the river. The west side of the river presented a fairly flat valley, approximately half a mile to a mile in width, leading to a low plateau in the west. On the opposite side of the Little Bighorn, the Wolf Mountains rose steeply, with coulees descending from the bluffs to the river bottom. At various points, the river, roughly 100 to 150 feet wide, flowed clear and cold, with a gravelly bottom for nearly 3 miles. Along the west bank, the Indian camps were pitched, with each of the 5 Sioux tribes, Cheyennes, Blackfeet, and Arapahoes, occupying separate circles, spaced about a quarter-mile apart to the west. Vast pony herds grazed, guarded by Indian boys and squaws. It's estimated that around 10,000 Indians, approximately 1/3 of all Sioux tribesmen, were present, including 2,000 to 3,000 warriors. This is a suitable juncture to dispel a common misconception regarding the arms of the hostiles. Contrary to popular belief, not all warriors were equipped with modern, repeating Winchester rifles and ample ammunition. In my estimation, half of the warriors carried only bows, arrows, and lances, while half of the remainder used assorted, old muzzle loaders, single-shot rifles, and odds and ends. Only about 25 to 30% of the warriors possessed modern, repeating rifles. Another important detail: Indian boys aged 14 and above accompanied the warriors and actively participated in the battle, especially in its later stages. The soldiers, meanwhile, were armed with single-shot, 45 to 70 caliber Springfield carbines, a weapon renowned for its accuracy and deadliness. Up to 600 yards, however. When fired rapidly, the breech would become fouled, and the greasy cartridges would often jam, refusing to be extracted by the extractor. This necessitated the use of a hunting knife to forcibly remove the empty shell, a procedure that claimed the lives of many a trooper on that fateful Sunday. Each soldier also carried a 6-shot single-action Colt Army revolver, the latest model available. The troops had been ordered to carry 100 rounds of rifle ammunition and 24 rounds of revolver ammunition, either on their person or in their saddlebags. As the troopers dismounted and every 4th man became a horseholder, many of the horse mounts were stampeded, resulting in the loss of thousands of rounds of much-needed ammunition, particularly for Custer's men. But, to return to Renault's battalion, after crossing the river, they formed a line in columns of 4s, with the Indian scouts on their left. Soon, Indian horsemen were seen riding wildly to and fro in the valley, and the southern end of the Indian camps came into view. Renault then deployed his 3 troops and scouts in skirmish line, covering the entire width of the narrow valley. Troop M was on the right, A in the center, and G on the left, with the scouts riding to their left front. Major Renaud dismounted his men, forming a skirmish line with 75 yards between each soldier. After advancing half a mile towards the Indian camp, they encountered a large body of mounted Indians who swarmed down upon them. For 10 minutes, Renaud's men held their position, firing steadily, but were soon enveloped by hundreds of mounted Indians, many using repeating rifles. Realizing the danger of being surrounded, Renaud ordered his men to fall back, mounting them in good order and retiring 300 yards. This was no sooner accomplished than hundreds of mounted Indians again swarmed down upon them. Renaud formed his troops in skirmish line and again dismounted, firing steadily. For 10 minutes, they held their position, but the Indians steadily closed in from all sides, firing at close range and inflicting severe losses. Fearing complete encirclement, Renaud ordered his men to retreat to a grove of cottonwoods, half a mile to the rear. Unfortunately, in the confusion, many troopers became separated from their companies, the horses stampeded, and the men broke in wild disorder. It is here that the highest casualty numbers occurred. Many troopers were shot from their horses, killed instantly, or butchered and scalped. The survivors crossed the river in confusion, ascending a steep hill on the east bank, closely pursued by hundreds of mounted Indians. About 15 to 20 soldiers perished in the river along the riverbank. Once Renaud's men reached the hilltop, the Indians drew back at this critical juncture. Around 2:30 p.m., Captain Weirwith, his D troop arrived, followed closely by Betton's troops, H and K. Though Renaud's forces were in disarray, the arrival of reinforcements restored some order. Benteen quickly assessed the situation and instructed his men to take up defensive positions. Soon they were joined by Captain M.C. Dougal's Troop B and the pack train, bringing much-needed ammunition and supplies. The combined forces entrenched themselves on the hill, preparing for a desperate defense. Custer, meanwhile, had proceeded down the river with his 5 troops, attempting to flank the Indian village. As they rode north along the bluffs, they came upon the main body of the hostiles. At the northern end of the valley, near the present-day site of the Custer National Cemetery, the full scale of the Indian forces became apparent. Custer's men were soon overwhelmed by the sheer number of warriors. Despite their valiant efforts, they were surrounded and cut down, fighting to the last man. As evening fell, Renaud and Benteen's forces on the hill could hear the distant sounds of battle. Realizing the dire fate that had likely befallen their comrades, the night was spent in anxious anticipation, with occasional skirmishes as the Indians tested their defenses. By morning, the Indians began to withdraw, having achieved a decisive victory. The survivors of Renaud and Betton's battalions were eventually relieved by General Terry's column. Arriving 2 days later, the Battle of Little Bighorn remains a profound and tragic episode in American history. The bravery and resilience of soldiers like Charles Windolph, who survived to tell their tale, offer a poignant glimpse into the harsh realities of frontier warfare. This account provides a detailed and vivid perspective on one of the most storied battles in the Great Sioux War of 1876. Stay tuned for more first-hand accounts of different battles. Have a great day, and see you next time.